Joining us now, great friend of the show, Matt Stoller. We're going to be talking about the FTC, antitrust, big tech, and gaming, all of that. Matt, it's great to see you, man.
There's a lot going on in your world right now.
It's all happening.
Yeah, it's happening. So Microsoft announced yesterday they're going to be buying Activision for like $70 billion. What do you think about this, Matt? I mean, we see a lot of consolidation here in the gaming industry. A lot of our audience probably are gamers. YouTube is a big place for gaming people. This is something the mainstream media doesn't really look at, but this is a massive market and it has huge impact for a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, gaming is, I mean, it's huge. I'm not a gamer, but it's like, it's an industry where you've traditionally had a lot of independent game publishers, but what is happening now is you're seeing a kind of attempt at, well, there's been consolidation, but this is an attempt to kind of turn gaming into a series of walled gardens, which is fairly similar to what happened with Hollywood and streaming over the last 10 to 15 years. So Microsoft is buying Activision, and what they're trying to do, I mean, gamers all, you know, everyone knows Game Pass.
Yes.
It's, and it's essentially, it's a subsidized kind of Netflix-like service. And I say subsidized because Microsoft doesn't make money on it. And then they just, you know, they use their other profit streams, which are massive, to, you know, effectively try to to give lower prices than anyone else could afford to attract people into their system. And then they'll eventually like try to raise prices later on. This is a really big merger, the purchase of Activision. It's a $69 billion merger. But for Microsoft, it's almost nothing. I don't want to say it's a rounding error, but it's like 2 to 3% of their entire market capitalization, right? So they're still making, you know, $20 billion, $20 billion a year on Windows and Office, you know, their cloud.
Right, cloud services
yeah,
and all that.
They're a $2 to $3 trillion corporation. So a $69 billion purchase isn't that significant. However, there is an open question as to whether this purchase will go through because of increased antitrust scrutiny. And the stock is trading, or was trading yesterday, at about $83. It went way up, but Microsoft's offer is $95. And that spread means that investors don't actually think that the deal is certain to go through. There's a little bit of risk. And at the same time as you saw Activision stock go up, you saw Sony's stock crash. Went down by about 12%. And the reason is because when you're up against a competitor who has endless amounts of money to destroy your business, then it's really dangerous. So the theory here is Microsoft will buy Activision and then will pull popular games off of Sony's platforms and make them exclusive to Microsoft platforms.
Wow.
So that's what that sort of fight is about. And the interesting thing about Microsoft is that it is one of, if not the biggest company in the world, but it has largely escaped antitrust scrutiny, unlike Apple, Google, Facebook, or Amazon. And it obviously there was a huge antitrust suit against Microsoft in the 1990s. But since then, Microsoft has kind of gotten a kind of, you know, the good guy reputation.
Yeah, they've got a little halo around them.
Yeah. They're like,
your friendly neighborhood $1 trillion corporation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, you have a piece, by the way, on your Substack, Big, that people should both subscribe to and then go read the piece because you're doing phenomenal work there. I am personally a subscriber.
Stop it.
Well worth it. It's true. But you write about this. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there about just Bill Gates and this.
Right.
In the 90s, he's this villain, he's this rapacious capitalist,
Right.
He's getting called, he's getting dragged before, all this stuff. And then he's, you know, makes his wealth play and he's reformed and now he's the good billionaire.
Right.
And that sort of tracks with how Microsoft has, in an era when, you know, tech has faced a lot of scrutiny at this point from Democrats and Republicans, Microsoft has kind of skated by. And what you say with regard to this particular purchase, and this is reading directly from your piece now, is you say that Microsoft's purchase of Activision wouldn't normally raise a lot of fuss in antitrust circles because there are still competitors in the game publishing market. As Microsoft gaming head Phil Spencer noted, the firm will be number 3 in gaming, and gaming is not a place where Microsoft has a unique capability. But that is only under the old antitrust framework. As Jonathan Cantor noted, with digital markets and stacks of products creating ecosystems that have lock-in, such a narrow lens does not make sense. So explain that concept, because yeah, you can see Microsoft saying, we're number 3 in game monopoly. What are you talking about? But you have to look at the whole ecosystem and all of the things that they're doing to see how they have, ability for anti-competitive behavior here.
Yeah, so this gets to the second big thing. Well, there's so much happening this week. It's all happening.
Yeah.
But so a couple of days ago, Lena Khan, who runs the Federal Trade Commission, and Jonathan Cantor, who runs the Department of Justice Antitrust Division, which are the 2 main enforcers of fair competition laws, they came out with an ask for information for merger guidelines. Now, this sounds really nerdy, but it's actually all the money and power in the world. Okay, because companies structure the economy by choosing how to merge and how not to merge. And since the 1980s or so, we've had a really lax way of understanding merger policy. So in 1982, Reagan's antitrust chief, Bill Baxter, said, there's a law against illegal mergers or against mergers that create monopolies. It's called the Clayton Act, but we're not really going to enforce it anymore. If a company is big, we used to think in America that if a company was big, it was probably because it was doing anti-competitive things. Not always, but often. And so the enforcers would be really scrutinize big companies. In the 1980s, Baxter, prompted by Reagan and Robert Bork and a whole bunch of others, said, no, if a company is big, it's because it's good at what it does. And why would you want to stop mergers? Like that, businessmen know what is good for their companies. And if they want to merge, who are we to stop them? And so you saw roll-ups across the economy. And that's why you have firms like Microsoft and like Apple and Google and CVS and a whole bunch of, the private equity and so on and so forth. So that what Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor did on Tuesday is they said, we're going to rewrite the merger guidelines, right? We are no longer going to take a very narrow lens where we said, okay, only if you can prove an inefficiency or if there's just some changes in prices, basically the evil nerds who control the world, we're not going to listen to them anymore. That would be like the economists. Who say basically bigger is better. And we want to hear from people who have been through mergers. We want to hear from farmers. We want to hear from entrepreneurs. We want to hear from workers. Tell us what you think we should be doing with mergers. And they asked a whole set of detailed questions, and they laid out basically a different philosophy of how to think about corporate power. And one of the things, I think the important thing that Jonathan Cantor said was, we have these digital markets, and it's not just about whether you make one video game and you're competing with someone else who makes a different video game. It's also about the platforms. It's also about the subscription services. It's about, a whole series, a kind of an ecosystem. And we can't think about just sort of very narrow lenses of competition. We have to understand the broader platform question. And this applies to, kind of everything that's going on in our digital economy. And so that's why that matters.
Right.
It's a merger like this would traditionally not be a big deal. They just kind of wave it through. But now when we're thinking, well, do we want the video gaming industry to be a series of walled gardens? That's a different question.
Can you explain to people what that term means, walled gardens?
Yeah, so a walled garden, I guess it came from
It's like a Web 1 term, yeah. It's like Yahoo News thing. AOL, right.
AOL dial-up, right? Like the idea is that you get to go and experience sort of the internet that is delivered to you by a corporation. So AOL, back when you had the dial-up internet,
right.
AOL
you had your email on AOL, right. And you got your news there. And all that stuff.
They basically, you didn't have a browser to the rest of the web, or at least there was the AOL service, and they gave you, your news and your everything else that you wanted, or that they gave you. And then if you wanted to go onto the web, the open web, eventually they would give you a browser to do that. But a walled garden is the idea that it's like kind of cable, right? You can only choose a certain number of channels, and it's a little bit one way. So what these really the goal of a lot of firms when they look at an open system like the internet is they're like, well, how can we create artificial scarcity? And how can we deliver to the consumer and not allow the consumer to sort of organize or talk back? That's what the strategy is. And to do that, one of the best things that you can do if you're an attempted monopolist is you create a kind of walled garden where you control all the content. So like a Netflix would be an example where, that's not an open system at all. It's just whatever
totally
Netflix
closed.
wants to give you, whatever So that's what they want to do is they want to turn kind of these open systems into kind of more cableized versions of the world.
This is another thing I want to ask on the gaming front, which is that I did not know this, but Microsoft already owns Bethesda Games, which is itself a large portion of the gaming market. So at what point would Microsoft then have one of the largest controlling stakes in gaming if this merger were to go through?
Yeah, so Microsoft has, I think, something like 30 studios that they've been buying up. And Activision itself is a merger of, I believe Blizzard was,
right.
in 2008, but they were itself a roll up in the 90s. So they have about 25 different studios, and so this is a merger of mergers. It's I think Microsoft will have one of the largest portfolios, not necessarily the largest, but one of the things I think is important here is to recognize that with these mergers and these corporations is that the people that are doing the work that are making these games are not the ones that are in control. So Activism, the CEO, I think, Bobby Kotick, I think is his name. He's just a financier, like a roll-up artist. I say artist. I mean, and he's had really serious like sexual misconduct scandals at the company, like alleged rapes, all sorts of really terrible stuff. But he's also just fundamentally really bad at managing games. I mean, they've been milking their existing portfolio to just, drag profit out of.
It's like Marvel, yeah.
Yeah, except they're not making good. They're just kind of like people like the games, and then
they've got Candy Crush and
I think Call of Duty. I
Call
think
of
those.
Duty.
And I'm not a gamer, so I know I'm going to say something like a little bit like.
We're sorry,
Well,
gamers.
you're
Nobody up
super
here is
mad.
gaming,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
we're fighting for you.
Don't get that mad.
Yeah.
I dedicate my nerd energy to one.
Yeah,
Thanks to
different
my
sectors,
8-year-old, I
that's
do understand Roblox a little bit
Right.
and a little bit of Minecraft. That's about it. I think, don't they have Minecraft too? Is that?
Yeah, they have Minecraft.
Yeah.
But there's another interesting angle here, which is that a lot of the fight over gaming is over sort of which walled garden gets to dominate. And it's the mobile platforms are where Microsoft doesn't have access to mobile platforms. They have to go through Apple or Google. So part of what they're trying to do is gain bargaining power against them by buying games like Candy Crush and then trying to negotiate more aggressively with Apple or Google to get into their app store, and without the 30% take or without certain provisions. And so the idea there is well, Google and Apple are trying to, they have effectively a lot of control over mobile gaming. And Microsoft is trying to bulk up so they can negotiate with them. I mean, ultimately, it's all ridiculous. Like, what we should have is rules that say, public rules, like, I don't know, the law, that say that you can't monopolize, right? I mean, we actually theoretically have rules that say that.
Yeah, they're just not enforced properly.
Right, to get back to Cantor and Khan, like, they are actually saying we are going to start enforcing these. I know one of the things that I think is really hard about antitrust, and it's weird, but there's actually a lot of good things going on. Like, it's an area where we're rebuilding the capacity for the law, and people just don't believe it.
Yeah.
Like they're just like,
they don't have any faith that it's actually going to matter.
I mean, can you
Well, so I'm looking at the CNBC headline, my go-to news source. The Senate they have all the best people there.
The voice of capital.
The Senate will get its best shot at regulating big tech, and Apple, Google, and Amazon are already playing defense. So what do people need to know about what's going on in Congress this week?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So there's a hearing, it's today, actually, the Senate. Actually, it's right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The Senate is the Judiciary Committee, which writes the antitrust rules. They are taking up two bills on that would put some mild constraints on dominant tech firms. So just basically those four. Microsoft might get wrapped in, but probably not. And the bill that they're taking up today it's a bill that bans self-preferencing. So it says Amazon, they have their Amazon Basics platforms or Basics products, right? And they will, if you do a search on Amazon for for socks or whatever. If Amazon has its own brand of socks, they might stick that ahead of everybody else's. This bill would say you can't do that unless you have to treat everybody equally if you own a platform. You can't treat your own stuff better. And this is a problem for firms like Yelp. It's a problem for firms like TripAdvisor, or and it's a problem for consumers, because if you go to Google and you look up, say, a doctor, right? Google's going to stick its reviews of doctors on Google Maps ahead of other potential sites that maybe have better reviews of doctors. And it's bad if you go and you get worse reviews of doctors, right? Because doctors are important,
right?
I'm told, so that's the kind of fight today. But this has been a fight for many years, and it all came out of an antitrust investigation in 2019 and 2020 in the House side, where David Cicilline and Ken Buck, who I know you guys have had on, they spearheaded a bipartisan investigation where they went through millions of documents and brought the big tech CEOs and grilled them, and didn't look like fools, actually. They actually looked like they knew what they were doing, and said, tell us about your business. And then what they found were a series of problems, conflicts of interest, monopolization. They just looked into these markets. And so out of that came a series of bills, and a bunch of them passed the House committee, and now the Senate is going to take up one of them, which is the self-preferencing one. Not that big a deal kind of in terms of restructuring the world, but politically it really matters, because this is the moment where people are saying, well, is there actually the political will to write a bill? And if it passes out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the answer is yes. Then it's kind of open season. A lot of stuff becomes possible. And if it doesn't, then we'll probably get delayed for a few more years in terms of writing legislation.
So it's kind of a put up or shut up moment in terms of, okay, are you all Democrats and Republicans just happy to go on chess beat for your pet causes with regards to tech, or you actually serious about regulating this market? And so we'll get a clue to that, or a little bit of an answer to that this week.
That's right.
Okay, good. Well, you'll keep us updated, Matt. It's been really fascinating. I hope some people got something out of this, and it will help you understand, if you are a gamer, some of the meta big forces, and also if you're not, this is a huge portion now of the economy. So there we go. Thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. In terms of your support, it means the world. Krystal, yesterday our A block mysteriously was just not able to be played on the YouTube app, which I have yet to receive a proper response as to
yesterday?
Democrats saying that, what was it, cult following, Paul Begala saying they have bad followers. Yeah, so mysteriously everybody who's watching it on YouTube on their phone, 50% of the market, whatever, unable to watch it. Look, as we said, that's why we rely on all of you. Premium link is there in description. We deeply appreciate it. We're just one, move away from them destroying us.
Yep,
and I reminded of that every day.
They are monopolists, as Matt Stoller will definitely tell you, and they have a lot more power than we do. So your support enables us to not have to live in fear of the every move of the YouTube algorithm. So thank you guys. We love y'all. We got some great content for you to post this weekend, and we'll see you back here next week.
See you next week.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.